All right, everybody, welcome back. Today is December 13th. It is a Wednesday. Today's discussion is going to revolve around the underlying causes of the Depression, as well as the steps it takes to get from the crash to the Depression. Now, the Great Crash, like I said, only affected 2% of the population, but how do we get a depression where people are so desperate they live in cardboard shacks and possibly sell their cars for maybe 10% of what they were really worth, or maybe even more, less than that, like 5% of what they're really worth. So, know what the cars are. People became so desperate. How does this impact ordinary Americans? Because, like I said, the crash only affected 2% of those who had money in stocks. And 2% of the population is 4 million people. So it's a lot of people. However, it's not a lot of the country at this point. So how does this depression begin to impact everybody across the nation? All right? That's what we're going to get at today. The bell ringer is pretty simple. If you had to cut back on your expenses, if your funds were limited, if your cash funds, meaning if you didn't have a job, if you had, or maybe you had a job that paid very little, what would you do to cut back on your expenses? And again, I had you write your answer and then you discuss with those around you before we discussed it together as a class. All right, so get this written down. Think about what you would do, and then we will continue at this point. Now, we did go over the top portion of the yellow worksheet. For a lot of the classes, it was due for a grade. Third period, I think, was the only class that it wasn't, because you guys only had like 3 minutes to do it, so I gave you some time today in class. However, for the rest of the classes, it is due for homework assignment, so make sure if you get it done before you come in, please make sure you download it on Canvas. Work on page 510 to 511. You'll see that step-by-step process it takes to get from the crash to the depression, this ripple effect across the economy. And then what we do from there after we review each one of those, again, put it in your own words. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory in their title. Like one of them is cuts in production. Then it goes rise in unemployment. And then it's further cuts in production. Obviously, the titles themselves could be pretty good understanding of how it happens, but they also explain why they happen. So that understanding right there is kind of what I want you to look at. Look at those different understandings. Look at what Americans are doing to react to some of these instances, and that's what we get through. Now, what we do at the end of class today, I give you time to work on these, but we go over them. All right, the underlying causes of the Depression. All right, there's 3 of them, and it's at the bottom of your worksheet, part 2 of it. All right, you can write these down, not exactly word for word, but you can write the title here that you see, write this part, stable economy, and then you can paraphrase what I have right here. I do the best I can to make it as short as possible, but I also want to explain it. So, with the unstable economy, throughout the end of the 1920s, industries are producing way more goods than consumers are willing to buy. If you have consumers buying goods that are up to this level, but you're producing up to this level, all right, I'm just, could imagine like bar graph here, all right? Production's up here, consumers are buying down here. This surplus that gets you from here to here, that's a lot of unused goods that you're producing that are just sitting around collecting dust, not making you money. And that's a bad thing for the economy, all right? So, but the also problem is few people had most of the wealth in the economy because of the stock market. And instead of buying more goods, which you expect they would do, they'd actually invested their money into the stock market even further. So when the markets begin to crash, we see more and more people losing more money because of these wealthy individuals who invested. All right, so it's definitely a major issue to try and, figure out how the wealthy were kind of partially responsible because we expect them to buy goods, instead they just invested their money. All right, second thing is over speculation. When people bought stocks, they didn't buy stocks with their own money. They bought it with borrowed money. I mean, they went to the banks, they took out a loan, and they said, all right, I want to use it for the stock market. So they used somebody else's money to play the stock market. All right? And they use that value of the stock as a collateral to buy more. So pretty much they say, all right, I want to buy more stock. Here's the value I currently own in a stock. I want to buy more with that, and just going to completely put myself in the stock market and be at its mercy. But when the market eventually does crash, the collateral is worth nothing. The stock that they have is worth nothing. And as a result, people begin to have their homes repossessed. I believe 1,000 homes per day are lost over the course of the years because of repossession, people not being able to afford their homes. And in fact, loans that are given out jump from $5 billion prior to the 1920s up to $850 billion in September of 1929. So this is a major, major jump in the amount of loans that are given out, and people borrowing money and spending that money very carelessly. All right. Finally, the last thing is the government policies at this point. Pretty much the government, in order to help individuals loan money out, they cut interest rates because they wanted the people to borrow more money because they were able to pay it back. Now, in the early part of the 1920s, people had jobs. They had every single resource they needed to pay back the loans that they had. So there was no problem there. And actually, that's financially, it's risky, but it's actually financially sound of what was going on at that point. The problem is, when overspeculation occurs, the control of the stock market, the government cuts the money supply, meaning the Federal Reserve does not print any more money. They don't put any more money into circulation when they take out. They don't keep it the same. They actually drop the money supply and take money out of circulation. The reason being is they want to discourage banks from lending money because they see that the borrowing is becoming an issue in terms of how much people are borrowing versus how much they're paying back over time. Finally, when the crash does happen and the economy begins to sputter, with this ripple effect that we see earlier, there is no money left in circulation to help the economy recover after the stock market crash. So when you want to look at money involved in circulation, this becomes a major issue with the economy trying to be rebuilt because the government policies were not ready to deal with some of these issues. Andrew Mellon, Secretary of the Treasury, he cuts the interest rates to help people borrow money. And then once overspeculation begins, he begins to cut money out of this, take money out of circulation, to pretty much allow people to have less money. So there's no lending happening anymore. But finally, when the market does collapse and when it does crash on itself, there's no money in circulation to help the economy recover after this crash. So it's a big issue, and you can blame different people. You can blame the wealthy, you can blame the government, you can blame people who borrow money, you can blame Wall Street, you can blame people who borrow money. Whatever you wanted to do at this point, you could borrow anybody you wanted to, and these are the underlying causes of the depression. Now, later on, some of our classes, we actually debated some of this. What I want you to do to kind of debate yourself is look at each one of these three. 1, 2, and then 3 here. Look at those and circle which one you believe had the biggest role in the depression and causing the depression. So that's all we have for the financial issues here. And it's very confusing, but it's always helpful to put yourselves in the people's shoes at this time period. All right. If you can do that, that makes it much easier to understand that and like I said, I'm never going to ask you questions on financial policy. What's the stock market value at? What's the Dow Jones at? What's the difference between stocks and bonds? I'm not going to ask you any of these questions, but I do want you to see how people were experienced and how they were affected by this crash and then eventual depression. That's what we're going to really hit the ground running with tomorrow even, is how the people, what are some of the social changes as a result of this depression. All right, so that's what we got today. Everybody have a fantastic day. I will see you tomorrow.